I'll take care of this one.
Hello, Hot Pants. I don't suppose you have a driver's license tucked down in there somewhere, do you?
You thought the Cannonball Run was just a wild road trip comedy? Well, behind the laughs and car crashes were real racers, unscripted chaos, and some downright ridiculous choices Hollywood hoped you'd miss. From a misidentified martial arts legend to a scene so real it fooled the cast, these are 20 outrageous truths even the biggest fans missed. Buckle up. It's wilder than you remember. Number 20. The role that almost belonged to someone else. You know that fast-talking priest with a gambling problem played by Sammy Davis Jr.? That role wasn't his to begin with. The part of Fender Bomb was actually written for the king of insult comedy, Don Rickles. His sharp tongue and no-filter style were a perfect match for the Cannonball Run's chaotic tone. He signed on, showed up, and then vanished. Just like that. Gone. Nobody knows the full story. Some say there were scheduling conflicts. Others blame creative differences. But whatever the reason, Rickles bailed last minute. The production team panicked. Then Sammy Davis Jr. got the call. He wasn't the first choice, but he turned out to be the best one. He brought this electric mix of charm, mischief, and swagger, especially next to Dean Martin, who was basically riffing drunk wisdom between takes. In the end, it didn't matter who was supposed to play Fender Bomb. It mattered who owned it. Sammy did, and the surprises didn't stop there. Number 19. The script? What script? You'd think a big Hollywood film would be planned down to the second. Not this one. The Cannonball Run was the definition of winging it. There was a script, kind of, but director Hal Needham basically threw it in the trash once the cameras rolled. Scenes were rewritten in trailers. Lines were made up on the spot. Some actors didn't even know what they were filming until they got on set. Farah Faucet said she never saw a full script. Dom DeLuise made up at least half of his dialogue. And Dean Martin, he showed up, cracked jokes, and said whatever came to his mind, usually with a drink in hand. There were no storyboards, no rehearsals, just one take after another until the crew laughed hard enough to keep it. It wasn't filmmaking, it was a filmed free-for-all. And as you'll see in the next wild story, sometimes that got way too real. Number 18. That time real cops crashed the set. One of the craziest scenes in the Cannonball Run didn't just look like real chaos. It actually was. During filming in downtown Las Vegas, the crew set up a car chase with squealing tires, sirens, and even fake gunfire. It was all movie magic until it wasn't. What the crew forgot to do? Tell the local police. As stunt drivers tore through the streets, real cops spotted the action and didn't realize cameras were rolling. They jumped into the chase, sirens blaring. Within minutes, what was supposed to be a scene turned into a real high-speed mess. Actors froze. Crew members bolted. One assistant director shouted, "Cut!" like it would stop the madness. But it was too late. After a tense standoff and a mountain of explanations, nobody got arrested. But they were warned hard not to pull that stunt again. Hal Needham's response? He nodded and kept the cameras rolling. And that attitude extended beyond the streets, even to the cars themselves. Number 17. Hal Needham gambled his Ferrari for real. When most directors rent cars for movie shoots, they hire backup vehicles, get insurance, and treat them like glass. Not Hal Needham. That red Ferrari 308 GTS, driven by Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., it wasn't a studio prop. It was Hal's own car, a stuntman's pride and joy. Fast, loud, and very much real. He handed the keys over with a shrug. No waiver, no backup, just a warning. Don't wreck it. And they nearly did. One take came inches from scraping the guardrail. Tires smoked, fenders kissed pavement. But Hal never flinched. To him, Cannonball wasn't about fake action. It was about showing what real speed and real risk looked like. And betting his own wheels was part of the deal. But where did this reckless spirit come from? To find the answer, we've got to go back to where the chaos all began. Number 16. The real Cannonball Run was an illegal cross-country protest. Before it was a movie, the Cannonball Run was a full-throttle act of rebellion. In the fall of 1971, automotive journalist Brock Yates and racing legend Dan Gurney loaded into a Dodge Sportsman van and drove from New York to Los Angeles in 35 hours and 54 minutes, without sleeping, stopping, or slowing down. It was called the Cannonball Baker Sea to Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash, a nod to Irwin Cannonball Baker, who raced cross-country over 140 times in the early 1900s. But this wasn't just a stunt. It was a protest against rising speed limits, new federal safety laws, and what Yates saw as the death of American car culture. By 1979, there had been 5 illegal Cannonball runs, with participants using ambulances, hearses, motorcycles, and even disguises to avoid police. Then Yates teamed up with Hal Needham and turned that outlaw spirit into a film just as chaotic. And the madness only grew from there. Number 15. The outlaw writer who became part of the movie. Most screenwriters just hand over their work and walk away. Not Brock Yates. He didn't just write the Cannonball Run, he lived it, and then jumped straight into the movie. In the film's opening moments, you'll spot him at the starting line, clipboard in hand, acting like he's running the race. But that wasn't acting. It was muscle memory. Because back in 1971, Yates was behind the wheel of that exact same Dodge ambulance, the real one, blasting across the country from coast to coast with his wife riding along in back and a fake medical crew up front. It was all part of the real Cannonball race he created to protest speed limits and government control over the open road. Years later, when cameras rolled, Yates returned, not as a screenwriter, but as a living legend walking through the madness he invented. And yet, not everyone involved loved the ride. Number 14. Bert Reynolds called it the worst decision of his career. By the time the Cannonball Run came around in 1980, Bert Reynolds had already conquered Hollywood. He was fresh off Smokey and the Bandit, the reigning king of box office hits, and had his pick of roles. But when his stuntman buddy Hal Needham pitched the film, Reynolds didn't say yes for the story. He said yes for the paycheck, which was reportedly over $5 million, and for the chance to hang with his friends. He later called it the dumbest thing I ever did. Reynolds admitted he barely rehearsed, didn't care about the script, and just saw the shoot as a paid vacation with a bunch of drinking buddies. When he watched the final cut, he was embarrassed. But fans? They loved it. It became a cult hit. And despite Reynolds' regrets, the film still stands as a wild piece of his legacy. And speaking of confusion, Farah Faucet had no idea what she signed up for. Number 13. Farah Faucet didn't know it was a comedy. Farah Faucet showed up to the Cannonball Run thinking she'd landed a high-speed romantic drama. Really, she took her role seriously, reading into the emotions of Pamela Glover, a photographer caught between danger and love. She asked questions about the backstory. She studied her lines. She even brought ideas for costuming that reflected her character's journey. Then Dean Martin walked onto set in a priest outfit, half drunk, cracking jokes about holy water being vodka. That's when Farah realized this wasn't the movie she thought it was. She later said she didn't understand it was a comedy until she saw it with an audience who roared with laughter at scenes she thought were sincere. But here's the thing. Her genuine confusion made her performance more believable. In a movie full of over-the-top antics, she was the grounding force, even if unintentionally. And now, let's talk about that big, ridiculous ambulance. Number 12. The real ambulance that faked its way across America. That huge Dodge ambulance in the film, not just a movie prop, it was the real deal. In 1979, Brock Yates and Hal Needham entered the fifth and final real-life Cannonball Run. They drove that exact ambulance, white with orange stripes, across the country, pretending to be a medical transport vehicle. They even had a fake patient strapped to a gurney in the back and a nurse in scrubs riding shotgun. Their logic? No cop pulls over an ambulance. And they were mostly right, until the engine blew outside Palm Springs. When the film started production, the same busted-up ambulance was pulled from storage, cleaned up, and put right back on the road, now as Bert Reynolds' getaway car. Number 11. Dean and Sammy weren't acting, they were partying. Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. weren't playing drunk priests. They were drunk priests, at least some of the time. On set, they were more Rat Pack than movie stars. They arrived late, sometimes not knowing their lines. Drinks flowed constantly, and no one, especially director Hal Needham, tried to stop them. In one infamous scene, Sammy tried delivering a prayer but slurred so badly that they had to re-record his audio later. Dean Martin just laughed, topped off his glass, and carried on. Needham loved it. He figured if he couldn't control the chaos, he might as well film it. The result? Pure gold. Their friendship, timing, and real-life energy created one of the film's funniest pairings. And somehow, it worked. Number 10. Roger Moore's last ride as Bond. Sort of. You'd think James Bond wouldn't show up in the Cannonball Run, but he kind of did. Roger Moore played Seymour Goldfarb Jr., a rich playboy who believes he's James Bond. He drives an Aston Martin DB5, speaks in spy cliches, wears a tux to a car race, and even introduces himself the Bond way. Moore. Roger Moore. It was a brilliant, tongue-in-cheek performance. But here's the twist. The real James Bond producers hated it. They couldn't sue, but they were furious that their leading man was parodying their billion-dollar franchise. After this, they made sure no future Bond actors could spoof the role in any film. So this silly race movie became a historic last. The final time an actual James Bond actor would ever play Bond for laughs. And Moore? He had a blast. One last martini-fueled joyride before the legal hammer came down. But not every part of this film was a joke. Number 9. The crash that changed Hollywood. In a movie known for wrecked cars and comedy chaos, there's one crash no one laughs about. During filming, stuntwoman Heidi von Beltz was riding passenger in a real Aston Martin. It was supposed to be a light bump into a parked truck, but the seatbelt hadn't been installed. The car slammed into the vehicle, and Heidi's life changed forever. She was only 28 years old and paralyzed from the neck down. Her injury led to multiple lawsuits and an industry-wide wake-up call. The Directors Guild cracked down hard. From that point on, no stunt sequence could be altered on set without full safety checks. Seatbelts became mandatory, and Hollywood's stunt safety protocols were rewritten permanently. Number 8. Jackie Chan's breakthrough almost didn't happen. Jackie Chan was barely known in the US when he appeared in the Cannonball Run, but he was already a legend in Asia. This movie marked his first major American appearance, and he treated it like a personal demo reel. He flipped off walls, launched himself through windshields, and delivered lightning-fast punches with that signature Jackie Chan precision. But most of his wildest moves? Cut from the final version. Within, American producers felt his action scenes were too intense, even confusing, for a comedy. Some of it also felt too foreign to audiences used to slapstick, not martial arts. Jackie was frustrated. He had more to give. But even those small, edited clips made an impression, enough to get Hollywood's attention, and that was all he needed. Within a few years, Jackie Chan wasn't just in movies, he was the movie. He even took inspiration from something hidden at the very end of Cannonball. Number 7. The blooper reel that launched a tradition. You know those hilarious outtakes during the credits of Jackie Chan's movies? They started here. The Cannonball Run was one of the first mainstream Hollywood films to end with a full-on blooper reel, showing actors messing up lines, stunts going wrong, and the cast laughing their way through it all. It was raw, honest, and showed just how loose the production really was. And Jackie Chan? He loved it. So much so, he adopted the blooper reel as a trademark in all his future films, starting with Dragon Lord in 1982. For Jackie, it was more than comedy. It was proof that what you see on screen comes with sweat, bruises, and a lot of fun behind the chaos. And speaking of chaos, nothing screams Cannonball more than landing a plane in the middle of town to grab a six-pack. Number 6, a real plane, a real landing. All for a beer run? One of the wildest scenes in the Cannonball Run isn't a car chase. It's a beer run by airplane. In the film, Bert Reynolds and Dom DeLuise are seen flying a small red and white MAL M4 light aircraft. They land it right in the middle of a town square, stroll into a bar for a six-pack, then casually take off again like it's no big deal. And yes, the scene really happened. To make it work, the crew had to remove actual power lines around the filming location to give the plane a clear flight path. The MAL's wheels scraped hard against the pavement during landing, and it suffered some damage from the stunt. While Reynolds and DeLuise are shown in the cockpit, a skilled pilot handled the real flying. This wasn't just movie madness. It was based on true aviation folklore, where bush pilots actually landed in towns for supply runs. Number 5. Hollywood called him Japanese. He wasn't. When Jackie Chan made his American debut in the Cannonball Run, he was thrilled. But there was one problem. The movie called him Japanese. Jackie is Chinese, and to him, that mistake wasn't just wrong. It was personal. Hollywood lumped all Asians together, and he hated that. He later called it lazy and disrespectful. Still, he gave the role everything. Jackie brought his own stunts, lightning-fast moves, and comic timing, even though his character barely spoke. He played a tech-obsessed street racer with martial arts skills, kind of like a ninja with a turbo engine. The car? A black Subaru GL packed with gadgets, totally over the top. But behind the scenes, Jackie promised himself something. One day, he'd show the world who he really was. No stereotypes, no labels. And just a few years later, that dream became reality. Number 4. Dom DeLuise couldn't keep a straight face, so they didn't make him. Most actors crack during takes. Dom DeLuise cracked constantly. Playing the lovable, chaotic Captain Chaos, Dom was supposed to be Bert Reynolds' sidekick. Instead, he stole the show by losing it. Mid-line, he'd start giggling, then wheezing. Sometimes he'd fall to the ground, laughing too hard to finish a scene. At first, director Hal Needham tried yelling, "Cut!" and resetting. Then he just gave up. He started keeping the bloopers in the movie because, honestly, they were funnier than the scripted lines. You can see it in the final cut. Dom's real laughter, Bert's real eye rolls. They weren't acting. They were goofing off on camera, and it made the whole film feel real. Number 3. The cannonball that inspired a global arcade hit. If you ever played Outrun in an arcade, you felt it. That wind in your hair, radio blasting red Ferrari freedom. It all started with the Cannonball Run. In 1986, Japanese game designer Yu Suzuki watched the movie and didn't just see comedy. He saw freedom. Highways with no rules, coast-to-coast sunrises, adventure without maps. So he built Outrun, not as a race, but as a feeling. You drove a red Ferrari Testarossa, your girlfriend riding shotgun. No finish line in sight. No laps, no opponents. Just speed, music, and escape. And Suzuki credited the Cannonball Run for the idea. That mix of chaos, comedy, and cross-country thrill hit a nerve. So if you ever gripped that arcade wheel and floored it, you were reliving the spirit of the movie, even if you didn't know it. But now, let's look at a face that confused everyone on set. Number 2, the cop who looked exactly like Bert Reynolds. Blink and you'll miss it, but at one point in the movie, a cop pulls over the Lamborghini, and he looks just like Bert Reynolds. That's not by accident. It was actually Roy Tatum, Bert's longtime stunt double. They looked so alike that even the crew mixed them up. Tatum wasn't supposed to be in the movie. He just dropped by to visit the set. Then someone said, "Hey, you look like Bert. Wanna wear a badge?" So they suited him up, gave him a uniform, and rolled cameras. It became one of the film's funniest little Easter eggs. A Reynolds doppelganger hiding in plain sight. Even funnier? One producer started giving Tatum full scene directions, thinking he was Bert. Tatum just smiled and played along. In a movie about fast cars and fake identities, this one might have been the most convincing of all. Number 1. The sequel was greenlit before the first movie was even finished. Most movies wait to see if they're a hit. The Cannonball Run didn't wait for anything. While they were still filming the first one, studio execs were already planning the sequel. Why? Because the dailies, the raw, unedited footage, had everyone laughing out loud. Executives saw the star power, the laughs, the cars, and the chaos, and said, "We want more, now." So even before the first film was wrapped or edited, the Cannonball Run 2 was already greenlit. No polished script, no box office numbers yet. They just knew they had lightning in a bottle. And whether you loved it or not, one thing's for sure. The Cannonball Run didn't just race across America. It raced straight into pop culture history. Thanks for watching, fam. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Check out the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you might discover next.